back to kind of the golden oldies stage, one of the stages of this, which is to go back through some of the principles of branding and what some of those principles of branding are. The one thing we have changed from last year is last year we played a little game, but we kind of, those of you who know me and know my views on branding know I can talk about it forever. So we did get to that. So we've actually switched it around. So rather than go through all the detail of branding first, what we thought we might do is do the exercise first. And we're going to do the kind of exercise with you that we actually do with people when we do focus groups with consumers, which is we're going to get you to do a kind of exercise. And part of the reason we moved this around and didn't put it up first was to build a little bit of trust in the room, because I'm going to ask you to actually close your eyes for a moment. This is what we call a projection technique. So we're going to imagine, in a moment I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, don't worry, I'll tell you when to do it, and we promise to be well behaved while you're there. We'd like you to imagine that you're at a party where all of the other guests at your party are cities. So you walk into the room and you look around at the brands. So you see Paris, London, Sydney, Melbourne, deliberately put both in, so otherwise people in Melbourne kill me.
They're not here because
they're
of delays.
They're all delayed down in Melbourne due to the high winds. Rome, Berlin, Rio de Janeiro. The first version I did of this was during the Olympics, so I put that in. Shanghai and Hong Kong. And then I'm going to ask you to tell me what does each one look like. I'm going to repeat all these questions once you've got your eyes closed, but just so there's trust in the room about what we're doing. Who's talking to whom? Who's the life and soul of the party? Who's the wallflower? Who got lost on the way? Who's spilling the drinks? Who's serving the drinks? So now if I can get you just to do that, if I can get everyone to close their eyes, and just there you go, I'm going to close my eyes as well. So as I say, you're walking into the room, you're at a party with all of these brands that are cities. You look around the room, can you instantly tell who's London? Can you see who's Paris? Can you see who's Rio? What do they look like? Are they a man? Are they a woman? Are they younger or older? What are they wearing? Who's in the middle? Who's the center of attention? Who is it that everyone wants to talk to? Who's kind of sat in the corner and is someone that you think, oh, I'd kind of like to go to talk to them, but they seem a little shy, versus who's sat in a corner and you know why they're sat in a corner? Who's there that you're thinking, oh, I'm not sure why they're here? Is there anyone there that you think might be someone who is, you know, a little bit more interesting? Who's too loud? Who do you want to avoid? Who is talking to whom? Okay, and as I say, who's the life and soul? Who's the wallflower? So what I'd like you to do now is very gently open your eyes and write down everything that you thought about as quickly as possible for me, please.
What are the other cities?
Okay, so just in case, sorry, Paris, London, Sydney, Melbourne, Rome, Rio. Sorry. I couldn't remember them all because my eyes were closed. How's everyone going? Anyone need more time? Give it a couple of minutes more. That's why I'm using the mobile. I'm not on there, by the way. I'm just making sure. One more minute. Everyone okay? Anyone like to share their thoughts? So who was the life and soul of the party? Rio.
Rio.
Okay. Was Rio a man or a woman? Female, okay. What was Rio wearing? Was there a wallflower?
Hong Kong.
Hong Kong?
I had Shanghai.
Shang-
Do you watch a few other ones?
Berlin was the wallflower.
Place Berlin anywhere.
Okay.
I was a bit like yourself. I felt that he
Yeah.
was a little judgmental, but I think maybe he was misunderstood and just a bit unsure of himself.
I've got to watch this.
Yes.
Oh no.
In what way was he misunderstood?
Well, he came across like he was maybe looking down on people,
Yeah.
but I don't think he was. I think he was just really shy and he just didn't know how to interact. But then I had London as bored and disconnected. And yet an older person, and the others didn't come up as young or old, but just really completely disconnected. And
Okay.
The whole party.
What about?
I had a bespectacled male art dealer from Berlin.
I had art as well.
Okay. Okay. Great. Anyone else different from London? I mean, did anyone else have London? Was London disconnected for everyone?
I had London is really talkative.
Okay.
Yeah, and kind of the life of the party, maybe after Rio.
Okay.
Yeah, bubbly.
What? Tell me.
Chatty? Yeah,
Yeah.
chatty.
Because it's just so vibrant and there's
Yeah.
so much going on, and that's how I perceive it.
Yeah.
London was serving the drinks for sure.
It's interesting because that to me is the heart of one of the challenges that certainly Visit Britain faces, which is you spend 20 years talking about castles, but then you've also want to talk about, street fashion, Alexander McQueen, you want to talk about all of those things. So you actually have, in this room, we've put our finger on the heart of a challenger. So Sydney and Melbourne, who were they and where did they fit in?
Hugh Jackman was Sydney.
Okay.
Melbourne was a bearded barista with a denim apron.
Did anyone see Gruen last night and the fact that we're all now anti-hipsters? Yes. Yes. I actually think they're really just two sides of the same coin, the bogan and the hipster. We're all about personas and the personas we create for ourselves.
I actually had Sydney as the life of the party, and I don't know, I felt like Sydney was his breath of fresh air. I think it's because what's outside.
Yes.
So I was just feeling that because I have a love-hate relationship with Sydney sometimes. So I think it was the waves that made me feel that all of a sudden it was like the breath of fresh air. It was a shock.
And that's actually something really important for how we consume brands, isn't it? The context of where and how we consume them. See, I remember I've always had this thing, I've always had a dream being someone from the UK who then came and helped Australia and Australian brands market themselves. So I was going, the best time I think you need to be in London is just in about 3 weeks' time when they change the clocks. And imagine when you come out of your office in London and you walk into the tube and suddenly it's dark, cold and miserable, where would you want to be? But it's interesting that those things come out. So we talked a little bit, so Shanghai and Hong Kong, both of those kind of came up as wallflowers. If they put the two of them next to each other, is one of them really secretly a party animal who wants
Hong Kong.
Hong Kong? Yeah. Yeah.
I had the Shanghai and Hong Kong. My thoughts were that they weren't actually engaging with anyone because they were too busy in the corner eating.
Okay. Any other thoughts about any of them? Anything that people would like to share in terms of what they thought? Who would you want to be talking to? Who would you go up and talk to first at the party?
The French
I think if I was feeling unsure about myself or not confident, I'd go to Rome because they're
Yeah.
a little bit, they'll make you feel good. So
Yeah.
I had a lot of,
thanks.
like, here for Rome, I said, had smelt really good.
Yeah.
And had all the women giggling and they, / sleazy. But if
Yeah.
you're a bit more confident about yourself and have, you're feeling and looking, go and speak to an Italian, right?
Yeah.
You feel bloody amazing. And I had Rome as a man.
Okay, so Rome, that classic Italian, yeah.
Great hair.
Is your mum in the background? Usually it's with Italian men.
Apron and
What about other people? Who did you want to talk to?
I had an interesting one with Shanghai and Hong Kong. I had both traders,
Yeah,
but Hong Kong had a backstreet trader,
yeah,
and Shanghai had high-end,
okay,
lots of shopping bags, Gucci, etc., etc.
okay. So what do we think this tells us about places as brands?
Lots of different things.
Yeah. And did you know how you kind of felt about them? Yep. Because I'll kind of now sort of tie it to the Rockstar theme. Same thing here. A variety of different. Some of them are pop stars. The division between rock and pop. Does it matter anymore? So lots of different ones. Again, do you like them all? Are there some you like more than others? Even if there are some very different ones that you like, would you listen to them all just as Giovanna said? Perfect setup and not prepared at all. Would you listen to them in the same situation? Because that's what rock stars are really. That's what they're increasingly saying. I mean, yes, it's about the music and it's about all of those things, but it's about brands and it's about personas. And I remember last year we spent a lot of time talking about the way in which Taylor Swift engages with her audience as a brand and how a lot of what she's built on, apart from the music, she gets away with it because the serious musos write about her music, but her true fan base, really, it's about a deep and intimate connection with them. She really gets her brand super well. So again, if you'd listen to them, anyone you didn't recognise there, I think.
Oh, yeah, just about all of them.
It's quite funny because there's.
I know her.
Okay, so you've got David Bowie, you've got Madonna, you've got The Clash, you've got Biffy Clyro, who are a Glasgow band, you've got AC/DC, you've got Meghan Trainor, you've got Wham, and I've completely forgotten this guy's name. It's Kanye West. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so again, just trying to get people immersed in that idea of branding and what branding means. Bringing this more into our space, so why should someone choose your experience, your product, your service, your anything, especially if they've never used you before? And that's where your brand comes in. And there's going to be a little bit of repetition in here on some of the points because they're really important points. And we're kind of hoping that by repetition, just as you do when you learn it at school, your times tables, that it kind of sticks. It provides that mental shortcut through the clutter. Because again, we're not talking in an isolated environment. We're not just talking in a world where we're talking about destinations or airlines or experiences. We're also competing with the consumer's attention against every other category of information. The amount of information that consumers are exposed to all the time is there. So our attention spans are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. Particularly if we grew up with mobile phones, etc., it's actually training our brains a different way. So it definitely provides something that cuts through the clutter, and at the same time as it comes back to that bit of a plug for our friends at Tourism Research Australia, the other TRA, trust, reputation and authority in search. Branding, as Bronwyn said, the artificial intelligence algorithms use branding to find a way to do that. And the great thing about branding is it doesn't mean you always have to be the best at everything, because very few of us are. Experience and customer interaction is a decathlon. It's very seldom a sprint. Thanks to KLM for that analogy, which I've been borrowing for the last 25 years. We don't choose brand A of brand B simply because we think it's better. We do it because we're confident in that. Human beings are risk averse. They do not want. Losing something is more important than gaining something. You can actually offer people an exchange. They've done this test many, many times, and they will keep something that's worse because it's theirs. Those of you who work in the area of frequent flyer programs will know people will hoard things and they won't give them away. They'll be waiting for them. So it's that what branding does is it gives people confidence to choose you. So your mission is, apart from an excuse to put Daniel Craig up there, why I didn't say, classic opening line, mission impossible. This is not mission impossible. This is very much mission possible. And it's a very effective way of doing it. So your mission here is own a position in the customer's mind so they think differently about you, about things that they care about. Sometimes it can also be about things where you're just different that may not be so important because that helps cut through the clutter. But ideally it's about things that they care about. And if you're doing that, it's kind of a virtuous circle. The things you have to do for Google, increasingly artificial intelligence is getting more like our intelligence. It's still not quite there. And I'll talk about some of those differences as we go through. But basically so that they have a clear idea that, you see, I don't have kids. Bronze 3 girls are among my kind of honorary network of nephews and nieces. That helps Google work out what they're going to send somebody who is at that life stage and without kids, whose idea of a great weekend away is, go down and visit Lucy in Bathurst and, go to Renzaglia Wines or drive the Mount Bathurst panorama rather than watch someone else do it, take my car around it. Versus Bron needs to have a family holiday, needs to have something in there for her and Chris. So this is why a brand's important. It tells Google which of those, what to put in front of me. I did just want to check in, thanks very much, Marianne, for setting it up. What do we mean by a brand? This is an old quote, but I still love it because I still think David Ogilvy was one of my heroes of marketing. He's been around a long time. Well, he's been dead a long time as it goes, but and he's still so eminently quotable. Apart from this, I love his quote on research, which is too many people use research as a lamppost to lean against when you're drunk, not for enlightenment, but for support. It should be for enlightenment. But what I think this grabs is some of the complexity of brands. And I know, in life we all hate complexity. Our brains are trained to look for the simplest, shortest cut to get to places. But with branding, you kind of do have to embrace that complexity of what sits underneath it. Modern equivalent, Seth Godin, Purple Cow, another of my branding heroes. So I think what we're getting here is there's a lot to a brand. You do have all of these quotes, so don't worry if you're not getting all of those words. But basically, it's the thing itself. It's how you talk about it. It's how people experience it. It's how they talk about it. Most importantly, and I think that this is the thing that Seth Godin's nailed, because we're talking about this a lot more, it creates value. If a brand doesn't make people more likely to choose you, more likely to pay more for you, less likely to defect when someone else does something new, there isn't really value in that brand. And I always laugh when people talk about the logos and stuff like that. Or the other conversation I have a lot with people is, this is all fancy schmancy stuff. You know what? I don't think Nike makes that mistake. I don't think Google or Apple make that mistake. Even during the global financial crisis, the strongest brands in the world grew twice as fast as even the Fortune 500 brands. So even the ones that were considered the top performers, the strongest brands, the brands that had the most engagement from customers, grew faster, stayed more resilient, had ability to do this. So brands are there for when times are tough. You can tell how passionate I feel about this. What they are, so all of those things that we touch and do and feel about your brand are there. And that's consistency across the different mediums. So words, tone of voice, language, image, video, visual identity, your logo, your colors, all of those things are part of it. As you said, Carrie-Anne, these things are sometimes confused with being the brand. They're assets of the brand. And again, the reason they're important, they're not unimportant things. They're very important things. They're the bits that you can hold on to and create value around that you use as your tools to do this. So what we're going to do now is we have a framework that we use. There are many, many different frameworks. But Bron and I kind of developed this, particularly Bron. She'd done most of the hard yards on this, but I'm just going to claim the credit because why not? To talk about breaking that down and understanding what that means in terms of what they're doing there. And this consistency, as I say, consistency is such an underrated thing in marketing. You know, we always do want the new and the shiny. But the thing is, how many of you who grew up in Australia can still sing the Vegemite song? There you go. Some Gen Zers at the back putting their hand up as well. So every time you change things, you're breaking that memory or that connection. You know, how many of people in this room can still sing or still tear up when they hear "I Still Call Australia Home"? Even though that Qantas doesn't use that anymore, it's still part of the history of Qantas's brand and involved it. It's really there. So as I say, it's more resilience in your brand. It's there to help you when times are tough. It's not a glamorous thing. It's something that's worth investing in. What we'd say about this is that consistency needs to cut across many things. So it's really important to understand what your brand is and to articulate it. Whether you use our framework or you use a framework of your own, a lot of the frameworks are very, very similar. As long as you're doing that, it's really, really important. And talk to people about it. Make sure that, you know, the people who are in your front desk at check-in, the people who are manning your visitor information centres, all of those people should understand the brand. And they don't have to understand all the technical detail, but they should know the words and phrases so that they'll instinctively start to use them. So that what's said in your advertising, what's said in your social media feed, what's said when you experience the product is all working together. Because as I said, it's about efficiency of effort. It's not that there's no work, but the more you do it, the more efficient it is. So you hear the kind of virtuous circle. You don't ever get to stand off the circle. It's continuously changing. But what you're doing is borrowing all of that consumer memory. I've got one piece of consumer memory and some ads in here to do this. So as I say, how you staff to do it, how you talk about it, it means that you can brief an agency, you can change agencies, and they'll still bring that DNA to it. They'll bring a fresh perspective. Refreshing a brand is important because context changes, competition changes. But the more you keep that, the better. If you think about it as kind of bottling the essence of the brand, it's really there. And now we know, bronze kind of artificial intelligence, I still think there's a place for a very efficient piece of technology that's about 50,000 years old, which is the hearts and minds of consumers. And thanks to some of that artificial intelligence, we now understand a lot more about how consumers' brains work and how we connect with them. Incidentally, we're also a lot more energy efficient. You know, the power that takes to Google to match what we do in a second, it takes about 10 times as much power. So there's still a place for us, particularly in a world where we're looking at energy efficiency and energy crisis. We're actually pretty efficient processors of information. So this was a TED talk that I came across that I've included the links, and I do encourage you to go and have a look at it, where he talks about how if we tell a story consistently over and over again, we can literally take that story and how it sits in our brain and the pattern it sets up in our brain, and then we will increasingly set that up in the consumer's brain. And if we can work it out, many of us are international brands, we're working across multiple languages. If we're actually doing that, and we work out what's the most consistent way to tell that in other languages, it actually works in other languages too. And the language he uses, fortunately for me, is Russian, which is one I understand. So I can actually hear what he's talking about. So I do encourage you to go and have a look. And I also wrote a blog piece about this because I found it was so helpful in thinking about that, why it's consistent. Because if I'm always using the same words to you, just as we've kept talking about your brand for the consumer and trust, reputation, and authority, the more we're consistently doing that, the more it's embedded in your brain as mental shortcuts. So I think that that's really, really important. It isn't for nothing. You do have to work at this. What we're trying to do here is minimize it. But as I said, over time, by doing that and keeping that consistency be there. So I found this little, and I'm not sure it's really super clear, but why it's efficient. So marketing is telling people, here you are, trying to chat someone up, I'm a great lover. Public relations is getting someone else to say, trust me, he's a great lover. Advertising is repeating that message over and over again. I'm a great lover, I'm a great lover, I'm a great lover. Branding is having the customer come to you and say, seduce me. Understand you are a great lover as a brand. So that is what brands do. Brands encourage customers to want to come to you. Can everyone in this room think about a brand that they're passionate about, or that they feel strongly about, or that they use over time? Interestingly for me, one of mine, people, think about the brands that you do and think about what they're doing to do that. Brands that you choose, even when, they're not the cheapest. They're not the most available, that people will hunt out, particularly for those of you I know from regional destinations. Sometimes people are driving 3, 4, 5 hours to you. Why are they going to drive 3, 4, 5 hours to you past other beaches, past other wine regions, past other amazing heritage experiences? What is it that's bringing them? And that's what a power of a brand is to do. So we're going to go, I won't spend too much time going through the detail of the brand here, and apologies for the lots of the words, but this is so that you've got those words behind you. So basically, we're probably going to just talk mostly around the kind of outer edge of the brand ring, because your positioning, your market, Bron's going to talk about after this. I always start with the functional benefits for the simple reason that all of the things you talked about this morning, Carrie-Anne, about educating people about brands, they tend to know what the functional attributes are. They tend to know Qantas has planes. They increasingly tend to know you have, the new Dreamliners going on the Perth route. They know that stuff. And it's the easy bit for people to get about what your brand, and it's still important. 2 things about it. One, it says you have permission to talk to them about the topic you're trying to talk to them about. So if you're a coastal destination, the fact you have beaches gives you that permission to talk to them about a coastal holiday. If you can't, if shampoo, for example, doesn't clean your hair, it doesn't matter how beautiful branding is, it kind of won't last. People use it once and it's like, I really liked it. It's like when a lot of the first environmental products came out. Those of us who cared about that stuff paid extra to buy those. When they didn't clean things, we stopped buying them because we might want to save the planet, but we still don't want to go to a business meeting in a suit with a tomato stain on it. So competence is important, and it's very important to think about that. Not everyone has to have it to the same amount. You just need to be over the threshold. Because, and a good example of that, when some of the new insurance brands came online, the Bingles and all of those guys, they were all fun and funky. You know what? Customers don't. What you want to know when you buy insurance is that if your house gets flooded, someone's going to give you money. So if you look at the way their advertising evolved, they've kept the fun, but they've started to underpin it with that competence and seriousness coming through. What are your proof points for that? So what is that? And the functional benefits are all the things that you do, and ideally some of those are different and better than the competition. But you know what? It's increasingly hard to stay ahead on anything that's a hard or functional benefit. I worked for the International Air Transport Association for about 5.5 years in their research department. We used to track customer satisfaction. You know what? When British Airways launched the first flatbed, well, firstly, I thought they'd gone crazy because it was a huge overspec, but it changed the game. And when we compared how quickly customers got used to that and other airlines copied them, compared to the previous round of seats, the Cradle seat, the Qantas Dreamtime seat, all of those things, we noticed that the cycle of innovation had gone, in a 5-year period, had gone from you could get away with 5 years of innovation to 2. It's probably down to 1 now, even in areas like the airline industry where you have to block those things. So really all of those things are there. And it's also a means to an end. So I've used the example of a roller coaster. Having a roller coaster in your theme park says you're going to give people fun, you're going to give them that emotional benefit. And this is one, I did some looking at the whole area of cities for Melbourne and what are the measures of a city. And this was, I really like the Monocle Quality of Life survey. It's lots of fun, it's not very quantitative, but it gives you a real good feel for things. And as they say, it doesn't matter how many art galleries your city has if it isn't safe, which is why that, those core competencies are there. The emotional elements, this is the bit that people tend to underrate, and it's so important because you can fake everything else, but you can't fake emotion. You can't fake how you make people feel. And this is the bit that people pay a lot of money to guard as brands. If you look at brands like Nike, who's one of the brands I most admire in the terms of the way that they do these things, this is the bit that gets you beyond it is the closest, it is the cheapest, it is the easiest to buy. So definitely this is what you need to be thinking about. So that is the things like, how does your brand make me feel? How does your heritage destination, your coastal destination, how does flying with Qantas feel different to flying different with British Airways? What are you buying? How does cruising with Carnival feel versus cruising with Royal Caribbean? Yes, they've got different ships, but those different ships are an expression of different brand personas and different target markets. So this is what you're really, really trying to do, is to build some of that in. And ideally, we look at that through core frameworks of archetypal needs. And these are two examples of that, so that we actually look at this in a deep frame of psychology. What is the brand allowing the customer to feel they are inside to tell other people they are? You know? What does it feel like to say you're a Qantas customer versus you're a Jetstar customer or a Tiger customer or an Aeroflot? Because you know, people used to say to me, the airline industry is all about price. And I'm going, well, in that case, Aeroflot would have been the world's most popular airline because you could buy Aeroflot tickets like that. It's not true. It's about this. So are you about making people feel like they're out there pushing the boundaries? You know, Nike, you know, just do it. Are you about people making feel like they're cared for and loved? Are you about making them feel they have fun? Now, all of us have got a home segment, but in different situations, we might be different. So I'm going to come up with a confession that, you know, I'm pretty much over here, you know, push the boundaries, change that. I do Zumba twice a week because just occasionally, I just want to have, which sits much more in this lover jester type space of fun, light-hearted, not too serious. Because, you know, most of my life is serious. Most of my life is what am I going to do next, planning stuff. For an hour, I'm just listening to fun music, I'm moving my body, and somebody else is telling me what to do. When the Zumba teacher's going, what's next, I have no idea. Zumba is a very smart exercise brand. They made millions by making it easy, making it fun, and saying that it does things. Lots of people are fazed by it, think it's weird, but the people who are into it, it's kind of a cult, like cruising. I probably won't take you through all of these ads, and it's a little bit dark on this screen, but 3 ads that really, for me, capture great emotions that capture brands. And I think we've got some people from Qantas in the room, so they might recognize. So this is a brand for Visa. And it's about, it was a sponsorship they did of the refugee team at the Olympics. Visa.
Oh, Visa.
Yeah, the credit card. This is Qantas. So this is their connection to home, feels like home, which is the evolution of I still call Australia home, which is what I mean about the idea of the evolution of the brand and that emotion about connecting Australians to home. Bronze ex Qantas, I used to do a lot of branding work with Qantas. We'd sit in focus group after focus group with Australians, where especially Australians who lived overseas, where they talk about how you get on the plane and the steward says to you, are you ready for Vegemite, sir? And how that felt, how that feels here for people. This is a British Airways ad from the 1980s. You can link to all of these there. This is an ad that talks about functional benefits of flying British Airways business class. Have a look at the imagery, it's so different from where we are now. And it shows why flying British Airways puts you ahead of the pack. It's a very 80s zeitgeist ad, you know, it's all city boys, it's greed is good, all of that. So they've captured the zeitgeist, but they can convey to you, I can still tell you all of the benefits that they put in that ad when it first came out. And it came out 25 years ago because it really, really got to why those benefits create a feeling for you. Why flying BA helps you get ahead in the business world. So that's what we're there for. So that's our emotional benefits. So it's storytelling, it's your visuals, it's the benefit that you're selling people. So what is it that you're doing for them? Are you refreshing them? Are you re-engaging them? Are you putting them ahead of the pack like that BA ad? All of those things come through. So how will a customer feel? What will being a customer of your brand say to other people? Because that's a lot of what we do with brands. One of the fun things is watching people say to people, if I took your frequent flyer logos off the bag, how would you feel flying? Because those things say things about us. Your brand personality. This is the bit we got you to do with the brand party, is to talk about the personality of the brand. And this is around the idea of, that's why I tell you, is a man, is it a woman? Because all of those are things that help you shape your communication around this. But this is your personality. And you really need to think of it as in a human way. And that will help you if you need to target 2 distinct groups of customers. So a business customer versus you know, a family holiday. If you've got 2 of those segments in there, it will help you find the common ground between those, but talk to their different needs. So as I say, I'm always Carolyn. But who I am with Bron tonight when we have a drink will be different from who I am when I'm with my mum, you know? But there's still me in there. What's the me in there? That's the bit I then present to other people in different situations. So if your brand's a person, what are you? Are you Rio, life and soul of the party in your bikini as a girl? Or are you, you know, you know, British Airways, Britain, London serving the drinks, what would you be? The essence of your brand. This is the bit that shouldn't change too much over time. You might tweak the wording. This is who you are, the heart of who you are, which is why we talk about the essence. This is saying that this is the values that you live by. This is the things that you will never ever compromise on as a brand. And it's really, really important. And again, this is similar. We can personify this, we can anthropomorphize this into saying it's about the values that you have. So are you reliable? Are you fun? Are you understanding? Are you flexible? Because that tended, you know, how flexible you are, how consistent you are, all of those things explain how you'll deliver the product. And these are always things that you should take and put and make sure this is the bit that your staff should definitely be across, because how their service interactions will work is how this will work. Okay, the brand position. This is a kind of bring it all together bit. And what it does is it sells that sizzle of the sausage. So yes, it's a sausage, but it's a sausage that tastes great. And it demonstrates why you're better. It demonstrates what's adding that value. Usually it's one or two, it doesn't have to be one word, doesn't have to be, probably not more than 3 or 4 sentences. It really encapsulates everything that you want to imprint. Because remember that neuroscience thing? This is you're trying to imprint that into the mind of the consumer. So writing a short statement for your organization, your business is what about. Externally, it's often the strapline, the tagline, whatever you want to call it, and that encapsulates the brand benefit. I know probably people in this room are a bit sick of hearing that one, but the reason it worked is it told a very simple, direct truth about the brand in very simple language. Just do it. Like I said, Nike, self-actualization. That is what Nike is selling. I don't have to ask, I don't have to apologize. They've cast that differently in China from how they've done it in the US. They've done it for team sports like FIFA World Cup. We've got a blog on the brand piece where we talk about that on our website. Pedigree, we're for dogs. How well does that, they've lost that. I don't know why you would ever lose that. We're for dogs, brilliant encapsulation of what you are buying or paying for premium dog food for. 40 years old and they've evolved at L'Oreal. We changed it from because you're worth it to because I'm worth it. How smart was that? Slight tweak, completely brought it up to date. These have survived. Singapore girl, she's 50 now. I think she's got to bit to Vampirella status, but all of those things. So basically what we'd advise, and those of you in Marketing Blueprint clients, you can get the video and run through this exercise. Go away and do that. Work through it with your teams. Find the words that are used about you. Ask people. We use this example a lot. You've got 80 beaches in it, Carolyn? 83 beaches. So your benefit is you've got 83 beaches because, you know, I'm so fed up of seeing.
No, we know now. That's what, 11,000.
Yeah. Australia has 11,000 beaches and coastal and aquatic is our platform. So that Tourism Australia is taking that coastal and aquatic message to the world. How are you saying, okay, you've done the bit in getting their attention. How are you getting them to drive, you know, 3, 4, 5 hours or pay Rex's fares to come to you? And that becomes then how you sit under that overarching brand of the coastal and aquatic theme. That's the bit that says, I'm going to go there rather than I'm just going to stay here. Because, you know, this is 25 minutes drive from my home, 35 minutes in the rush hour. So what is it that you're doing that's getting me that value? And make sure you share it with your agencies. Don't be mysterious. These people are your partners. You've got to trust them. Make them sign a non-disclosure agreement, of course, but that's that. So that was branding, and thanks for sticking with me, particularly those of you who've heard me rant on about this a few times. If you have any questions, we'd love to answer them, but I'm going to hand over to Bron. She can talk about personas. Again, if you kind of